At level 1, you're basically at the bottom of the kitchen, chopping vegetables, preparing ingredients, cleaning your station, and doing whatever the chefs above you need. The kitchen is hot, the hours can be brutal, and while you're helping prepare expensive meals for paying customers, your own paycheck probably isn't anything impressive. But keep climbing, and this career starts to look completely different. At the highest level, your name can be above the restaurant door, other chefs can be cooking your menu, customers can wait weeks for a reservation, and the real money may come from restaurants, partnerships, books, television, products, and an entire business built around your reputation. The strange part is that both careers can start in exactly the same kitchen. One person stays behind the stove, while another eventually learns how to run the station, then the kitchen, then the restaurant, and finally, the business behind all of it. So how do you actually go from preparing ingredients for somebody else to having entire restaurants operating under your name? There are 7 levels, and at every one of them, the job becomes a little less about simply being good at cooking and a lot more about how much responsibility you can handle. This is every level of being a chef explained. Level 1 is the Commis chef, basically the junior chef at the bottom of the professional kitchen hierarchy. And if you're imagining yourself walking into the kitchen on your first day and immediately creating beautiful dishes while everyone admires your talent, that's probably not what's going to happen. You're much more likely to spend your time doing prep, which means chopping vegetables, peeling potatoes, preparing herbs, measuring ingredients, organizing containers, cleaning equipment, and repeating the same basic tasks over and over again. It doesn't sound glamorous, but this is where you begin learning how a professional kitchen actually works. Cooking at home might mean chopping 1 onion for dinner. In a restaurant, you might need enough onions for an entire service, and everything has to be prepared before the first wave of customers arrives. Once the dining room starts filling up, there's no time to suddenly discover that you're missing half the ingredients your station needs. And that's when the kitchen changes.
Tickets start coming in, pans hit the burners, chefs start calling orders, and the quiet room where everyone was preparing ingredients 20 minutes ago suddenly becomes controlled chaos. This is where you learn one of the most important skills in professional cooking: consistency. Making something perfectly once is nice, but a restaurant needs you to make it correctly again and again, whether it's the first plate of the night or the 50th. The same cut, the same portion, the same preparation every single time. If you're constantly slow or unprepared, the people above you notice very quickly. But if you're reliable, they start trusting you with more responsibility. Eventually, instead of preparing ingredients for somebody else's station, you're given a station of your own. And that's when the pressure really starts. Level 2 is the line cook, and this is where you're thrown directly into restaurant service. Maybe you're working the grill, maybe sauté, maybe fry, but whatever station they give you, that part of the plate is now your responsibility. This is also where you discover that being a good home cook and being a good restaurant cook are 2 very different things. At home, if dinner takes 5 minutes longer than expected, nobody really cares. In a busy restaurant, those 5 minutes can throw off an entire table. Imagine 4 customers ordering 4 different dishes. One needs steak, another needs fish, another needs pasta, and another needs something from the fryer. Different cooks are preparing different components, but somehow all 4 plates need to be ready at almost exactly the same time. Your steak can't sit around getting cold while everyone waits for the fish, and the fries can't be finished 10 minutes before everything else. So you're no longer just cooking food, you're managing timing while everyone around you is trying to do exactly the same thing. During a serious dinner rush, the grill is full, tickets keep arriving, somebody is asking where table 24 is, another station needs something from you, and somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, you're still expected to send out the same quality of food you produced when the restaurant was empty. Experienced line cooks can make this look almost mechanical. They know what's cooking, what needs to go next, where every ingredient is, and how much time they have without constantly stopping to think about it.
But eventually, being excellent at your own station isn't enough to move higher. The next step is becoming responsible for the station itself, including the people working around you. Level 3 is the chef de partie, often called a station chef. Now a specific section of the kitchen is yours,
which sounds like a small promotion until you realize that every problem on that station has just become your problem too. If ingredients are missing, you need to fix it. If prep isn't finished before service, you need to fix it. If someone working under you makes a mistake, you can't simply ignore it, because their mistake can eventually become your entire station's problem. This is usually the point where leadership starts entering the job. You may have junior cooks working with you, which means you have to teach them, correct mistakes, check their preparation, and make sure everything is ready before service begins. And that's where you discover something that happens in almost every career. Being good at a job and being good at teaching someone else to do that job are completely different skills. You might be able to complete a task in 5 minutes, while the new cook takes 15. Doing it yourself would be faster, but if you solve every problem personally, the people underneath you never improve, and you eventually become the bottleneck. So you start learning how to make other people better, not just yourself. And that skill becomes much more important at the next level, because eventually somebody has to stop managing one station and start helping manage the entire kitchen. Level 4 is the sous chef, basically the second in command of the kitchen. At this point, your job starts becoming less about asking, "How do I cook this?" and more about asking, "How do I keep this entire service from falling apart?" One cook called in sick, a delivery is late, you're missing an ingredient, a piece of equipment suddenly stops working, one station is falling behind, and the dining room is completely full. None of those problems are unusual, and somehow the customers still expect their food to arrive correctly and on time. They don't know that someone didn't show up for work. They don't know the supplier was late, and they definitely don't care that the grill decided to stop cooperating in the middle of dinner service. From their perspective, they ordered a meal and the restaurant needs to deliver it. So the sous chef becomes one of the people constantly solving problems that customers will hopefully never know existed. You move staff around, check timing, inspect plates, answer questions, help struggling stations, and step in wherever the kitchen needs you most. But something else changes at this level too. You start seeing food not only as ingredients but as numbers. That piece of meat has a cost. The oversized portion somebody just served has a cost. The sauce that got thrown away has a cost. The refrigerator full of ingredients nobody used has a very real cost. And suddenly you understand that a restaurant doesn't survive simply because its food tastes good. The food has to taste good while the economics behind it also make sense. That's the world the person above you has to manage every day. Level 5 is the head chef, or in a larger operation, the executive chef. This is probably the position most people imagine when they hear the word chef. But ironically, the higher you climb, the less of your day may be spent simply standing over a stove. Now you're responsible for the entire kitchen. That can mean the menu, staff, schedules, suppliers, food costs, training, quality control, hygiene, equipment, inventory, waste, and about 100 other problems you probably didn't imagine when you first decided you wanted to cook professionally. You might create an incredible new dish, spend hours perfecting it, put it on the menu, and discover that customers simply don't order it. That's a problem. Then you create another dish that everybody loves, except the ingredients are so expensive and the preparation takes so much labor that the restaurant barely makes anything when it sells one. That's a different problem. So cooking becomes a balancing act. The food needs to taste good, customers need to want it, the kitchen needs to be able to produce it consistently, and the restaurant needs to make enough money from it to keep operating. At this point, you're not responsible for making one plate correctly anymore. You're responsible for creating a system where an entire team can make hundreds of plates correctly, including on nights when you aren't personally touching every dish. For many chefs, this is the destination. They run the kitchen, create the menu, lead the staff, and build their reputation. But some eventually look around and realize they're already managing a huge part of the operation. They are creating the food, training the employees, controlling costs, solving problems, and helping somebody else's restaurant make money. And eventually a question appears. If I'm already doing all of this, why don't I own the restaurant? That question takes us to level 6. Level 6 is the restaurant owner, and this is where being an excellent chef stops being enough. You can be incredible in the kitchen and still discover very quickly that owning a restaurant is an entirely different profession. Now you need a location, equipment, employees, suppliers, insurance, inventory, marketing, reservations, accounting, and enough cash to survive while the business is finding its feet. The scary part is that you can start losing money before you've served a single customer. Rent doesn't wait for the dining room to become popular. Employees still need to get paid, ingredients can spoil, equipment can break, and every beautiful detail you added to the restaurant probably cost money too. Then opening night arrives. Every table is full, the kitchen is moving, customers are ordering food, and for a moment it feels like you've made it. But a full restaurant doesn't automatically mean a profitable restaurant. Revenue isn't profit. You still have to pay the employees, buy ingredients, cover rent, pay suppliers, maintain equipment, deal with waste, handle taxes, and cover all the other expenses that customers never see. Only after all of that do you find out what the business actually made. This is the first level where your financial upside can become dramatically larger than it was as an employee, but it's also the first level where your downside becomes dramatically larger too. As an employee, a terrible month might threaten your job. As an owner, a terrible few months can threaten the entire business. But suppose it works. Customers keep coming back, the reviews are strong, the kitchen becomes consistent, managers know what they're doing, and eventually the restaurant doesn't need you physically standing inside it every hour that it's open. That's a huge transition, because you've stopped creating only a job for yourself and started creating a business that can operate through other people. And once that happens, one question becomes almost impossible to avoid. If this restaurant works, what happens if you open another one? Level 7 is where the chef starts becoming a brand. One successful restaurant becomes 2.
Then maybe another location opens in a different part of the city, followed by a different concept, another market, or eventually another country. Now there can be executive chefs running kitchens under your name while managers operate restaurants you might not personally visit every day. Your job changes again because you're no longer worrying about whether one station is ready for tonight's service. You're thinking about locations, expansion, contracts, partners, management teams, brand standards, and whether something that worked beautifully in one restaurant can survive being repeated across 10. That's much harder than it sounds. One great restaurant can depend heavily on a specific chef, a specific team, a specific neighborhood, and an owner who is physically present all the time. A restaurant empire needs systems strong enough to reproduce the experience without depending on one person standing in one kitchen. And for the tiny number of chefs who become internationally recognizable, the business can expand far beyond restaurants. Television appearances, cookbooks, branded products, partnerships, licensing, events, and other commercial opportunities can turn a chef's reputation into an asset of its own. That's when the career becomes almost unrecognizable compared with where it started. At level 1, your value came from what your own hands could prepare during a shift. At level 7, thousands of meals can be served under your name across multiple restaurants while you never personally touch any of those plates. You started by working inside the system. Now you own the system. So that's the ladder: commis chef, line cook, chef de partie, sous chef, head chef, restaurant owner, and finally, the chef at the center of an entire restaurant brand. At the beginning, you're learning how to control a knife and prepare ingredients correctly. Then you learn to control a station, then a kitchen, then a restaurant, and eventually employees, money, systems, locations, and an entire brand. And that's the strange thing about this career. The food never stops mattering, but the higher you climb, the bigger the thing you're actually responsible for becomes. At level 1, you're trying to make one task perfect. At level 7, you're trying to build an organization capable of delivering that same standard thousands of times without you personally being there. And that's every level of being a chef explained.